Well, I'm happy to be on the show. I'm glad you do cover some wrongful conviction, and there's other topics which I consider to be important as well. So, I'm an attorney, and I'm a founder of the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice, which is a nonprofit, organization which I founded, and it we have as our mission freeing people who are in prison for crimes that they're innocent of, as well as pursuing policy changes aimed at preventing those in the first place. And I started the organization after I was exonerated by DNA testing myself after being in prison for 16 years. So I was 16 in Peekskill, New York, for a murder commit. I was arrested based upon a coerced false confession. Ultimately, I was wrongfully convicted, even though the DNA didn't match me based on that coerced false confession, prosecutorial misconduct, fraud by the medical examiner. I lost 7 appeals. I got turned down for parole. Ultimately, I was exonerated through further DNA testing, which not only established my innocence, but also identified the actual perpetrator whose DNA was only in the data bank because left free while I was doing time for his crime. He killed a second victim 3.5 years later. It was a school teacher who had children.
Wow. So 16 years old, that'd be your baby.
Wow.
Yeah, it was.
Who were the victims?
So it was one victim. It's a murder and rape of a high school classmate. Her name was Angela Correa. She was an immigrant from Colombia. She had been in the country for about 1.5 years, living a very sheltered life, as I later came to learn. She never went anywhere unless she was accompanied by her parents. She was in 2 of my classes as a freshman, one as a sophomore. I knew her name. She knew mine. That was really the full extent of it. We were not even really on a high vibe. So one of her classes was a photography class, and the professor gave the assignment for the students in that class to take pictures of foliage. He had instituted a buddy system pairing the male students with the female students. And so after school, Angela walked home with her sister. Her sister went to the restroom. When she came back, Angela was gone. She left to go to the park, take the pictures, and the male student that was assigned to her played hooky on the assignment. He never showed up. She was on this wooden. There was a wooden path which connected some condominiums to a school. It was kind of deep woods there, and she was on that path taking pictures, where she had the misfortune of coming across the actual perpetrator, who was at the time he was Steven Cunningham was a 29-year-old drug addict who was high. He saw her, and the rest is history. I got on the police radar for 2 things. So firstly, I was quiet to myself and I didn't participate in a lot of organized sports. And that made me seem strange to the kids in the high school. In the course of the police investigation, the police interviewed many students from the school. Some of them told the police that they might want to speak with me because I didn't quite fit in. In addition, I was a sensitive teenager. This was my first brush with death, and I had an emotional reaction to that. And the police thought that was suspicious, that that my emotional reaction was disproportionate to the actual relationship with the victim that I had, which is to say no relationship at all, as I mentioned. So those 2 factors got me on their radar, and that was reinforced by a psychological profile which the Peekskill police got from the NYPD, which purported to have the actual characteristics of the perpetrator. I had the misfortune of matching that. So a reinforcing factor. So for the next 6 weeks, the police played this cat and mouse game with me, in which half the time they would speak to me like I was a suspect. And when they would push too hard, I'd get frightened and I'd want to get away from them. They would switch it up, and Jeff as this junior detective helper theme was developed. They would say things like, the kids won't talk freely around us, but they will around you. Let us know if you hear anything. stop in from time to time. Prior to being a teenager, the career I wanted to have when I grew up was to be a cop. So this unexpected early opportunity to do this quasi-police work, along with my age, 16, was how the police were able to pull the wool over my eyes as to the absurdity that a 16-year-old would be able to help in an active homicide investigation. I came from a single-parent household. My father was never involved in my life in any aspect, and that also intersected with the police tactics. They would play the good cop, bad cop routine, and in time, I began to look at the officer who was pretending to be my friend as a father figure. So eventually, they told me that they had some new information they wanted to. It was in the file that they wanted to share that with me, and that would allow me to be more helpful to them. First, though, I would have to take and pass the polygraph. So the next day, rather than reporting to the high school, I instead went to the police station. Because it was a school day, my mother and grandmother thought I was in school, so therefore they did not call around looking for me. But they drove me to the town of Brewster, which was in Putnam County. That was 40 minutes away from Peekskill in Westchester County. I didn't know where I was. I had no money. I had no independent means of escape. So that meant that I was no longer able to leave on my own. I was instead totally dependent upon the police. There were 3 officers that came there with me from Peekskill, but then there was the Putnam County Sheriff's investigator, Daniel Stevens. He was dressed like a civilian. He never identified himself as law enforcement, and he never read me my rights. I didn't have an attorney present. They didn't give me anything to eat the entire time that I was there. They gave me a 4-page brochure which explained how the polygraph worked, but I had a lot of big words in it that I didn't understand. But then I figured, well, because I'm there to help the police, I thought, what does it matter? Let's just get on with it. From there, they put me in a small room, and the polygraphist gave me countless cups of coffee. I think the purpose of the coffee was to get me nervous. And then he wired me up to the machine, and he launched into his 3rd-degree tactic. So he invaded my personal space. He raised his voice at me. He kept asking me the same questions over and over again. And as each hour passed, my fear increased in proportion to the time. And he kept that up for 6.5 to 7 hours. Towards the end, he said, "What do you mean you didn't do it? You just told me through the polygraph test that you did. We just want you to verbally confirm it." And when he said that to me, that really shot my fear through the roof. And at that point, the officer who had been pretending to be my friend, he came in the room and told me that the other officers were going to harm me, that he was holding them off, that he could not do so indefinitely, that I had to help myself. And then he said, "Just tell them what they want to hear. You can go home afterwards. You're not going to be arrested." Being young, naive, frightened, 16 years old, I wasn't thinking about the long term. I was just concerned with my own safety in the moment. So I took the out which he offered, and I made up a story based on the information that they had given me that day and the 6 weeks run up to it. I was in fear of my life. The fact that I didn't know where I was and nobody else knew where I was either loomed rather large. By the time it was all said and done, I had collapsed on the floor in a fetal position, crying uncontrollably. Obviously, I was arrested. I was charged with a murder and rape. Last thing I'll say is that the interrogation was not videotaped. It was not audio taped. There was no signed confession. It was just the cop's word for it. And when they came to court, they left the threat and false promise out of their story.
Wow. So, how has that experience, because you do, you help people who are wrongfully convicted now, is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. But I mean, that's just the story of how I got arrested. Before we get into that, I mean, I would like to just share briefly how I was wrongfully convicted and, how I was exonerated.
Oh, no, that's fine. I was just going to ask you something about the interrogation part.
Yeah. No, that's
so
fine.
with the interrogation part, by the way, I teach law. So with the interrogation aspect of it, how does that affect the things that you look for when you're taking on a client? I have a lot of my students that are listening, so this is one of the things that they're interested in, because they didn't believe like they can lie to you and it's okay. You know, it kind of gets like pushed aside, and that's how we end up getting a lot of wrongful convictions or wrongful like confessions and stuff, and other tactics that they use. So I'm just curious as to like how that affects what you look for now in clients' cases.
Sure. And I want to add that, a lot of people think that an innocent person would never falsely confess, but it's actually caused wrongful convictions in 29% of the DNA proven wrongful convictions. So I want to reinforce your point and mention that while adults have given coerced false confessions, that youth and people with mental health issues are particularly vulnerable. So in terms of how what happened with me influences which cases that I select. So I know what tactics to look for. So when you look at not just my own case, but obviously I have that in mind. But then I also, I know what the red flags are that a confession might be false. So I've read several hundred summaries of exonerations that have happened through DNA. So there's an unassailable pile of data, and there are certain common patterns in the false confession cases. So when we analyze a case, we ask ourselves two questions. Number one, do we believe the innocence claim? Is it at least plausible? And part of that analysis is looking at what was used as evidence of guilt. So we look for common patterns that a confession might be false, or common patterns which indicate that an identification might be mistaken, or that an informant might be lying. So asking ourselves that question is one key, and the second key is, we ask ourselves, is there a potential route to exoneration? So we look at, is there something that could be subjected to DNA testing? Is there hair? Is there saliva? Is there blood? Is there seminal fluid? Is there a piece of clothing that a perpetrator sweated into? That's in a DNA case, which is only available in approximately 10% of all serious felony cases. But in the non-DNA cases, we look for things like an alternative suspect, similar crime in a nearby area. If we think any of the witnesses were lying, then we might re-interview them. We file freedom of information requests, and sometimes documents that were supposed to have been turned over, and those documents could furnish a new investigative lead. Sometimes witnesses that bubble to the surface that we didn't know about. Conduct on the part of law enforcement has bubbled to the surface in some other unrelated case. So all of those things, constitute like a direction to go in, because you might be convinced that someone's innocent that's not how you win. The court is not going to allow you to relitigate. You have to find some new evidence that probably would have led to a different outcome. Okay, so before the trial, a DNA test showed that seminal fluid found in the victim didn't match me, but rather than acknowledge that they made a mistake, they continued full speed ahead. In order to explain away the DNA evidence, the prosecutor got the medical examiner to commit fraud, to commit perjury. When there's an autopsy, audio notes which are taken as the findings are made. So it was only after the DNA that matched me, which was 6 months later, hundreds of autopsies later, the medical examiner said he remembered that he forgot to medical evidence, which he claimed showed that the victim had been promiscuous, which has opened the door for the prosecutor to argue that was how the DNA did it. I was guilty. He claimed she was sleeping around, and then he took it a step further and mentioned another youth by name that he claimed, but he didn't try to prove that. He didn't get a DNA test performed. He didn't even call him as a witness. to give testimony to that effect. He simply made the unsupported argument to the jury. At the same time, that essentially didn't defend me. He never interviewed or called as a witness my alibi. I was actually playing wiffle ball when the crime happened. He rarely met with me. When he would meet with me, I tried to explain to him that I was innocent and what happened in interrogation me up. One time he told me he didn't care if I was guilty or innocent.
Wow.
He never cross-examined the medical examiner. He never made use of the DNA. Argued to the jury that the confession never happened. Other times he argued that it did happen, but it was coerced. And at still other times, he false confession. So he took an approach of just throwing things against the wall and hoping that something stuck. Which, as you might imagine, didn't. The jury. I don't see how a jury could have viewed him as having any credibility at all. Lastly, the trial judge allowed the polygraphist to repeatedly tell the jury that I failed the polygraph. That was, very prejudicial. At the same time, my lawyer was banned from asking him questions about how he arrived at his opinion. And another thing is that the victim's clothes, including her bra, had been entered in evidence. That intersected with one of the statements that was coerced out of me, in which I said that I had ripped her bra off. But the jury asked to see the bra, which was important because there's some bras, the way that they are made, you can't rip them off. And when the jury asked to see that, that's when the judge said that the bra had been left in the courtroom over the weekend, and that the janitors apparently thought that it was garbage, and so it was thrown out, and so it wasn't available any longer. So the judge refused to grant a mistrial, refused to strike testimony about the bra. And lastly, the jury sent out a note on the third day asking if they couldn't come up with a verdict, would they be kept sequestered over the Christmas holiday? And the judge told them that they would. I learned many years later that at that point, the vote was 11-1 for a conviction, but there was a holdout juror that thought I was innocent, but they were all pressing that juror. And then when the answer to that note came back, that ratcheted the pressure up, and nobody wanted to be there over the holidays. So he switched his vote, and I was wrongfully convicted. I was given a 15 to life sentence. I'd been charged and tried as an adult. I was sentenced as an adult. And the judge gave me that sentence despite saying maybe you are innocent. And I was sent to a men's maximum security prison where, I remained for the next 16 years. I mean, along the way, I got turned down for parole, lost 7 appeals. Before that, I got blocked by former Westchester County District Attorney Janine Pirro. She was the DA by the time my first appeal was decided, and she blocked DNA testing several times. She got me thrown out of federal court once because the court clerk had given my lawyer the wrong information pertaining to the filing procedures, and that resulted in my habeas petition arriving 4 days late, which she argued the court should simply rule I was late and not look at my arguments, and that's what the court did. Several courts upheld that ruling, including where several proceedings where future U.S. Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor upheld that ruling, and the Supreme Court declined to give me permission to appeal to them. I was out of appeals at that point, so I wrote letters for 4 years looking to find somebody who would take my case for free because I had no money to hire an attorney or an investigator. And the hope, of course, was to find some new evidence of innocence, which would have probably resulted in a different outcome. And so after writing letters for 4 years, one of those letters reached an investigator, and she connected me with the Innocence Project, and they took my case. So that was the first key. And the second key was that Pirro left office and her successor was willing to let me get the testing. And the third thing is we got lucky that the actual perpetrator's DNA was in the data bank because as I mentioned, left free while I was doing time for his crime. He killed a second victim 3.5 years later. So the DNA matched him. Confronted with the evidence, he admitted he was the one who committed the crime. So my charges were ultimately dismissed on actual innocence grounds, and he was subsequently arrested and convicted.
Wow. Did you ever God, I would have so many words to say to him. I can't even
Well,
imagine because you lost.
I did have a lot of words to say. I mean, when I was conviction was overturned, I was at the press conference. I mean, I spoke for like 2.5 hours off the cuff. I mean, in front of the press, the media, everything I had ever wanted to say, but could never get anybody to hear me came out. And just when I thought I was finishing up, another topic dawned on me, and it continued on that way.
Wow. Yeah. But it's 16 years, right?
Yes, 16 years from age 17 to 32. Yes.
So literally half of your life at that point had been spent in the system.
Correct. Yes. Yes,
That
and
is just awful.
as a result of that, I mean, when it made the reintegration process, which would have been tough under any circumstances, I think even more challenging. So let me share a little bit about the reintegration difficulties. I mean, the world was much different technologically than what it was before. Cell phone, GPS, internet hadn't been created. Culture was different. The cities looked different. I had long since lost contact with friends. The overwhelming majority of my extended family never came to see me. The few people that did, it was very sporadic. I saw my younger brother 3 times in 16 years, not at all in the last decade. So when I would meet up with members of my extended family, it was awkward because I knew who they were intellectually, but because I had memories of them when I was younger, but I was a different person then, and so were they. I saw a mental health professional 4 times a week for 6 years, and overcoming the psychological after effects of the experience. There was the social stigma aspect of it. I was in prison for 16 years, yes, but I was in prison for 16 years. So how much of that rubbed off on me is, was it safe to be alone someplace with me? So for many years, that posed a significant obstacle in terms of personal relationships. I was always passed over for gainful employment. It seemed like all the would-be employers, they wanted somebody who could hit the ground running, someone that had a work history rather than having some patience for on-the-job training. So I was always passed over for that. I did catch on as a weekly columnist, but it was only a weekly newspaper, so they only wanted one article a week. I was making money doing speaking engagements, but you only get paid if you get booked, so that's not a consistent form of income. So as a result of that, I lacked stability of housing. I bounced around from place to place. At one point, coming a couple of weeks within a homeless shelter, and it was just lonely. But I think that those are just challenges in general that exonerees face. But I think I had some particular challenges, because I was in prison for my formative years from 17 to 32. So just putting that in perspective, I mean, I didn't graduate high school. I didn't go to the prom. I had never before had a driver's license. I hadn't lived alone. I hadn't lived alone before. I missed births, deaths, weddings, various rites of passage, finishing my education at a more traditional age, being well on my way in a career. So all those things made for a challenging time. It was a difficult 5 years. It took 5 years before I got financially compensated. But in those 5 difficult years, I mean, I simultaneously was doing advocacy work. So, as I mentioned, I was writing, I was speaking. Aside from that, I was regularly meeting with elected officials, urging them to pass wrongful conviction prevention-oriented legislation. I was meeting with the media, so I figured out how to keep the media coverage, continuing on. I got a scholarship from Mercy College, which is now Mercy University, and they upped the ante and allowed me to live on campus and gave me the meal plan, which is how I avoided the homeless shelter. I finally got compensated. I wanted to bring my advocacy work to the next level, hence dedicating, a significant portion of the money to the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice, which has uh, freed, to this point, we've freed 15 people since opening our doors in 2011, and we've helped pass 9 laws aimed at preventing wrongful conviction. I didn't get into law school, so I went to grad school and got a master's degree. My thesis is written on wrongful conviction cause and reform, so I figured that the additional credential would make me a more effective advocate. And at some point, I got tired of sitting in the front row of the courtroom. I wanted to sit at the defense table. I wanted to represent some of the clients, make some of the arguments, hence a second foray, attempting to get into law school. This time I got in and graduated law school.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That is
Absolutely
awesome.
amazing.
That is awesome. It's a good,
Thank you.
inspiring story.
Well, I do hope to inspire people that are in the same position that I was in, not to quit, not to give up, to do the things that I did in order to make it out. I mean, I used to go to the law library all the time. I would read books and articles about other people that were exonerated, for inspiration and to, learn, how and what route did they take. I oriented all to have some kind of potential usage, for when I regained freedom, rather than, taking programs that were a waste of time. I avoided the prison politics. I used to read nonfiction books I read nonfiction books from 1998 to 2006. I read like three or four nonfiction books a week. So that was how I, and then I had to keep fighting off feelings. I had to keep fighting off feelings of hopelessness. You have to fight off suicidal ideation. But I mean, I did it. I knew that nobody was coming to my rescue, and I was going to have to recruit somebody to help build a bridge between legal help that I needed, as I had read it happen in other places. And so to do that, I knew that, I was going to, have to keep my sanity to do that. So hence, I think belief in God was a big factor. And, I didn't think about that I had a 15 to life sentence. I just figured I have to hold on for a year or two to the next appeal would be decided, I was going to win because I was innocent, and I still naively believed that the system worked. So I think handling things from an incremental point of view was a big help. There was another prisoner there named Frank Sterling, also was innocent, and we used to get together once every 6 weeks, and we would, half the conversation would be trying to keep each other going morale-wise, and the other half would be like a brainstorm session about what the next letter was to write, what the next tactic was. Frank was ultimately exonerated through DNA testing, and so a couple of years after me. So it wasn't that I was naively believing that he was innocent. He actually was innocent. And then just when I was kind of at the end of my rope, a letter, ad for a pen pal was answered, and I was asking the stranger that I didn't know from anywhere, you guys commit suicide and be done. I'm never going to make it out of here. And, he encouraged me to keep going. So all those things were factors in how I survived my wrongful imprisonment.
Do you still talk to that person?
I do. Yep. His name's Scott. He lives in
Nice.
Northern California. And I always tell him whenever I'm coming, I mean, I mentioned earlier, the foundation does policy work through our partners. It Could Happen to You coalition, and we're active. The foundation and I are active in the coalition in New York, Pennsylvania, and California. Whenever I come to California, I tell him, hey, Scott, I'm going to be in town from this date to this date. And he meets me and just shadows me the entire time that I'm out there. And so we catch up that way. And, he comes along while I'm doing my advocacy work, and during my downtime there, we socialize. So my way of just, trying to be appreciative and grateful, to him.
That's amazing. I love that. So do you currently only do post-conviction?
Correct. Yes, I currently only do
Amazing.
post-conviction. Yeah. Yes. The other part of that is true, but I do get involved in the compensation process. So once people are exonerated, I do work on a compensation cases in collaboration with more experienced lawyers. So I do have a law firm. I mean, it's just me, and I partner with more experienced lawyers. So I only use maybe the better way to put it is I only use my law degree on wrongful conviction related matters. So primarily trying to exonerate people, but also helping them get compensated on the back end.
Do you happen to also help people who didn't quite make it to trial and might also maybe need assistance with that?
Yeah, we don't rule out. I mean, we're looking for innocent people where there's a way to potentially win the case. So even though somebody might not have went to trial, I mean, we actually have 2 cases that we're working on where people have pled guilty to we believe crimes that they didn't commit, and we're at different points in time trying to exonerate them. I mean, one of the cases we're still working in the field, and in the other we have a habeas corpus petition that's awaiting a decision right now.
Nice. Well, if you ever happen to make it to Georgia, Jen just might know somebody.
Okay, listen, I'm a people person, so I never know where my travels might bring me, and definitely.
Oh my gosh,
reach out.
We met over, like we met some interesting people over this, but this guy was held in jail for over 330 days with no bond, no indictment, and there was no crime scene, no body, no nothing. But yet he was being held for murder, kidnapping, and robbery.
The word of a crackhead.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
And he just happened to be a black man in a very racist
with zero
county
proof.
in Georgia.
With zero proof. They just took her word for
Yeah.
it. No proof. And held him.
So that was all just pre-trial detention?
All pretrial detention. They gave him a when they went to the last bond hearing, or when they went, because he did give him a bond hearing 4 months after he had gotten arrested. And they said it's a conspiracy because you won't reveal who the other people are. He was like, because I wasn't involved in anything. I don't know who you're wanting. And the judge said, you have to reveal it, or it's a conspiracy every single day. So you don't actually have a 90-day clock. Well, then he finally that was in November. Then the following June, he finally got another bond hearing. And the DA said, yeah, we're never going to indict this. And the judge says, I don't think y'all ever even had probable cause to begin with. And I'm like, well, that's a big shift from your last position of it's a conspiracy. But now he's sitting here like they won't dismiss the charges. It's been 2 years since he's gotten out. He's having trouble even getting like gainful employment because people Google him and they're like, oh yeah, he's got like murder charges pending.
Well,
and it's ridiculous.
But are the charges pending, or they dismissed the case? Which of the 2?
They did not dismiss the case. It is still sitting there.
No, I mean, yeah. Well, I mean, they said on the record there's no probable cause. I mean, his lawyer should be filing motions in court to dismiss the case then.
Yeah, well, his lawyer is on record in the transcript saying that he didn't do his job either. And I was like, I mean, I was reading it and I was dumbfounded. I was like, that is insane.
Wow. Well, I mean, I think he should, try to get a different attorney. I mean, there isn't any nonprofit entities down there that you can get in touch with, because it sounds like he's in need of some, competent representation.
He is. He definitely is. They're trying to work with his original attorney. He was right on the South Carolina-Georgia border, and so his original attorney was actually a South Carolina attorney, and so he's trying his best to get that guy to file for it to be dismissed, but
Okay.
The guy won't even return phone calls.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's unfortunately kind of typical. I mean,
Yeah.
what happens is that they have too many cases at once. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not unusual for one public defender to represent 100 people at the same time. So
I know, it's sad.
that's very sad. That's very sad. But I mean, I feel like there's a number of deficient things with the public defender system. I mean, I think that there should be an even financial playing field between the district attorney's office and the public defender's office. I think that there should be an equal budget so that they can have, equal resources to, manpower and experts, and have a limitation on the caseloads, and have equal pay for, for both sides. And I think there should be a statewide system so there could be oversight and quality control rather than just doing it county by county.
I would love to see that happen. I when I was going through law school, I started working with juveniles, and I learned what a horrible system that is too. And it was completely different. I had no idea that the structure and everything was so like different. But I remember meeting with one of the kids on my caseload. I met with his public defender, and she pulled out her drawer, and I saw her case. I said, "Is that all your current cases?" And she said, no, I've got some still up here on my desk." And I was like, "Oh my God." And she was like, "Yeah, it's a lot." And I just felt so bad.
Yeah, because a lot of people get, ground up in the system just through, through deficient representation. For sure.
Yeah. It was really bad. But it was that was my first like real like time of like advocacy where things were on the line. And I had a 15-year-old who was facing 2 life sentences. And I was convinced he was completely innocent of it, but nobody wanted to hear me out.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. I mean, I'm that, giving, juveniles life without parole. I mean, that was an important decision, Supreme Court decision when they stopped, when they, stopped that, Roper versus Simmons. But I just feel really strongly that, the development just developmentally, I mean, the brains of kids are not the same as adults. So, I mean, an adult doing a criminal act and a kid doing the same exact criminal act, I don't look at that as the same moral culpability. I mean, you're
Right.
much more susceptible to peer pressure and, not thinking, long term, which I think is another really good reason why, juveniles shouldn't be housed in adult facilities also.
I was going to ask you about that because here
Yes.
in Georgia, I know that he had told me that if he got sentenced to life, that he would be able to stay in the YDC until he turned 18. But he said then they pick you up literally the morning of your 18th birthday, and they take you to the adult prison. And I was just like, oh my God, 18, you're still a freaking baby.
Yeah, you're still very young at that point. I mean, I think, maybe 23 or 24 would be maybe like a good cutoff point there to separate people out. But I mean, kids with adults is one thing, but I think another separation should be, people that are, behaving violently while in prison shouldn't be housed with those that are not, because you're going to put people in dangerous situations where they may need to defend themselves. So I think that that's another division, and I think that people that are whether mental health or on charges should not be housed with regular people in general population.
I couldn't agree with that more too. So I did have a question because I've talked to a lot of people who have been, paroled at some point in their sentences, but the one thing that they all seem to kind of have in common is one of the hardest transitions for them is how their sleep changed. Did you find that
Well,
same type of thing? Yeah,
yeah,
because they said that they still
definitely.
had like they
Yeah,
had like
you mean home my sleep patterns after I was.
yeah,
Yeah, well, definitely my sleep
yeah,
patterns were affected. I mean, I think for many years I kind of ran on adrenaline. I think I slept maybe like 3 or 4 hours a night. I do frequently get nightmares. I mean, I think as time went by, that started to reduce. I mean, I've been home now for like 18 years, so I think very often, but once in a while I do have them. But I know I mean, often I would remember, or sometimes I might wake myself up, just from talking, talking in my sleep. Or another thing could be that my mind is just racing, thinking about what I experienced or that I witnessed, and so I couldn't sleep based on that way. So different aspects of sleep being affected.
and sleep can affect so many things in our lives.
Yeah, for sure. But I feel
Sorry,
like
guys.
yeah, it's okay. The more time that has passed by, things have become more like normal for me out here. I guess it's a little bit less strange to be outside here.
That's not well. I'm glad. I know it has to be a huge transition. Um,
Yeah, definitely a big transition from one place to the next. But I have found my purpose in the world doing this advocacy work. I mean, that's how I make sense of things in a kaleidoscopic type of way. I know I'm doing the work I'm supposed to do, and this is what happened to me. It's I like doing advocacy work. It's healing. It's meaningful. It's cathartic. And it makes my suffering count for something. And at the same time, I'm not an angry person. I want to enjoy myself as much as I can. And I don't think I can do that and be angry or bitter at the same time. I feel like I lost so much already as is. Why would I want to, in effect, lose the rest of my life? If I was to be angry or bitter, it's not like I would be impacting the people that had a hand in what happened to me. I would really be the only loser in that scenario. And, the vehicle that allows me to actualize that is I take the energy that I feel and I, channel it into my advocacy work. And, I have an inner peace with that.
that I love. That is the best. I bravo. I don't know how I could do it, but I also I know that when you're put in a situation, you respond differently than how you would think you would anyhow. It's just I know it's different. Oh,
Yeah, we
what
really
an
don't know
amazing
how.
story.
Yeah, it is. I mean, sometimes when I share it, I tell it, it's hard to believe that I'm the person that they're talking about, because when you just pay attention to what is your senses are telling you. You're looking at, I'm free. I'm looking at, houses and supermarkets and restaurants and outdoors and fresh air and sunlight, and it's the opposite of what prisons are like. So it's hard to believe sometimes that I'm really talking about myself or something that I experienced sometimes. But at the same token, I mean, I do like chatting with other exonerees and even just other people that were incarcerated before, and I feel like that's like a type of grounding, just to remember, where I came from, where how things used to be, and just trying to keep everything out here in perspective.
Are you still up in New York?
I am. I am. I'm not in Peekskill anymore. I mean, I live in the Bronx now, which is like 50 minutes south of Peekskill. But I still go back
So,
to Peekskill semi-frequently, though. I still go semi-frequently.
so there's a guy that's in that area. He's pretty well known in the Bronx, who has a podcast and a foundation that focuses on, prison reentry and stuff like that, because that's, he went through it. He spent 17 years in prison. Um, it's Pistol Pete.
I haven't heard of him or met him, but I will. Well, wait a minute. Yeah, I think I did his podcast. Yeah, yes.
Did you Dog in the Yard?
What's that? Yes, I did Dog in the Yard. Yes.
Yeah.
I
He's
did
quite a
Dog in the
character.
Yard. Yeah, he is quite a. He is. Yes, he is. Yeah, he is quite a character. Yeah, I enjoyed his podcast, and as he might say, how he keeps things real.
He does.
He does. He keeps it raw, and prison parlance and everything, and he shares things with the way that things actually were inside.
Yeah. I was helping too. I was helping him. I met him because I was helping to ghostwrite his book.
Oh wow!
And he has an amazing story too. All y'all up there, y'all should get together and like get a whole documentary made together.
That would be amazing. Speaking of documentaries, there is a documentary short out about me that's available on Amazon Prime. It's called Conviction. It's a short. It's 21 minutes. There are several works by that title. So obviously the one about me is going to have the picture of me on it. There is a fuller version called 16 Years, but the producer and director is currently looking for a distribution deal, and once that happens, it'll be released to the public. So I hope that she finds that within the next year, and I would like to find a literary agent and be able to publish a book. I mean, I do have a book that's 95% written, but I'm looking to get it published by a major publishing house that could have a budget to put like marketing and public relations behind to set up book signing tours, things, get a shelf space, things like that. I mean, I don't want to try to take all that stuff on myself. I already have quite a bit I'm doing with my foundation, but I would like to get the book done, and I would love to have a movie out, about my story. I'd love to somehow break into motivational speaking. I've done plenty of other speaking engagements, and including teaching CLEs and continued legal education, but I would love to break into the motivational speaking space. But I know that not having a book has been a factor that's that's held me back in some ways.
I totally understand that. That is, it's a lot to accomplish. I've been watching other people kind of navigate those waters, and it is absolutely a lot. I've been fortunate to get to meet some very cool people that are connected to studios and stuff like that. I'm just waiting to see some of the projects like to start actually happening. There's so many stories that need to be told, and it's just people don't realize just how bad it can be. People think that, oh well, they're probably guilty of something else instead, so I mean it's okay, and they like blow it off because it's not them, and it's like, no, that's not how this should be.
No, it's definitely not how it should be viewed. I mean, I do think one of those things you mentioned, they probably did something else. That is, I think that's part of the rationale of why some prosecutors or some cops do what they do. Well, you didn't do that, but you did something else, so it all kind of evens out in the end. But I have the problem with taking that kind of approach is, number one, you don't know that. Number two, by doing that, you're really denying justice to the crime victims. I mean, they're not the person who committed crime is not being punished. You're leaving somebody free to possibly strike again, and then you send the wrong person to prison. You're not just sending them, but then you're also sending you in effect send their family as well.
Wow. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Um,
But I
oh,
do
this is
I do
such a
want to
good
mention I do want to mention with the foundation, we recently had our third annual gala, fundraising event. And an anonymous donor came forward and he offered us a $10,000 matching funds. We have to it's a matching funds offer, so we have to raise $10,000 in order to get the 10,000 from him. So we're in the process of doing that. So if people are listening, can check out our website, www.deskovic.org, deskovic.org. My ultimate goal is to have a chapter of the foundation in each state and ultimately in each country. I really see this as a worldwide issue. And I think countries where we don't hear about wrongful conviction is not because injustices aren't happening. It's just that, nobody's digging, nobody's looking, nobody's getting exonerated. So that would be like the legacy that I would like to be able to, leave in the world one day. But of course, that's going to be when, that's possible from public funding. I mean, that's what a nonprofit organization is. I mean, we're going to try to provide a service to people that can't, population that can't afford to pay for it, even raise money from a third party source. So that's, always the bane of the nonprofit world.
Right. Well, one of the things I think people don't also understand is there are limited ways to raise funds, period, if you have somebody who has a violent charge. And even if they're as innocent as can be, people don't want to take that risk.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true. That's true as well.
It's there's a lot of things that impact people when they're going through the system, and it's mind blowing.
Yeah,
Wow.
for sure.
Sorry, Julie and Andrew. I
Oh,
was
you're
excited
okay.
about talking because
Yeah, no, I figured out. It's been lagging for me every once in a while, so I'm glad you were able to pick up the slack, because I'm like every once in a while it lags and I'm like, oh crap.
no, listen, I was glad to, because this is one of those topics that I'm very passionate about. With my students, I try very hard to help encourage, advocacy and looking at things in different ways, and changing their focus, like taking them out of their moral compass and into that legal lens, and so you can view the case without adding in those emotions as much as possible. And I always want them to go and
It's
do
definitely
good
important.
work.
That's
And
definitely important. Sure. Well, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, you can. Well, when you chat with them about our interview, I mean, you can tell them, that I was encouraging everybody to take at least one wrongful conviction in the course of their life.
they better do more than that.
Of course, but
Oh my gosh.
I mean, look, a lot of people don't even do that, though. A lot of people don't even do that.
Oh, I know. It's I know. That's one of the things that I would like to figure out a way to help support those efforts, and figure out a way to bring together um, law clerks and paralegals and stuff like that, maybe who could help, on the back end, alleviate some of that stuff.
No, it is a big problem. We do. It definitely is a big problem, and we need as many people helping out as we can. I mean, per the National Register of Exoneration, just from 1989 forward, 3,681 exonerations that have, happened. Which is, that's those of us that made it out.
Yeah. There was a case that was just overturned in Louisiana, I think, in April, and it was Jimmy Duncan, and his case is really interesting because it's
Okay,
tied to,
yes.
who I'm talking about? the bite marks.
Yeah, I
and
think
the,
I've met him before. Yeah,
yeah,
right.
his
Yeah. I mean,
his case is interesting.
that's, I mean, yeah, right.
Yeah, his got overturned.
Yeah,
They
junk
said these are
science is
not
definitely a major
experts.
cause of wrong
Yeah.
conviction, things that have been accepted as evidence in the courtroom.
Not just junk science. He had an uncertified medical examiner too who did the autopsy. And this medical examiner who was only supposed to be doing like it was like, oh, I'm sorry. I said he also had an uncertified medical examiner who did the autopsy. And
Yes. Oh, wow.
this guy was not only uncertified, he wasn't just uncertified, he was doing like 12 to 1,800 autopsies a year, which is insane.
Yeah, that is insane.
So it's, I don't know. It's an exciting time though to start seeing, that kind of junk science clearing people. It's just sad that people have had, the bulk of their lives being taken away.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah, you can never get any of that time back.
No. Well, this was amazing. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I appreciate you guys having me on. Send me the link of when, send me the link, and I'm happy to share it around on social media. Okay. And again, if you're listening and you like what you've heard, again, I encourage people to check out the documentary short, which is available on Amazon Prime, called Conviction. Follow us on social media, Deskovic Foundation on Instagram, the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation on Facebook. I have a personal and private page as well, Jeffrey Deskovic, on both of those. You can follow me on LinkedIn, and we have a TikTok account as well, so you can keep up with the work of the foundation, legislation we're working on, upcoming events, interviews, media appearances, updates on cases.
Okay.
All right,
That would be
well, listen,
amazing.
thank you very much for having me on, and I look forward to listening to the episode.
Yes, thank you for being
All right,
here.
thank you so
Absolutely.
much. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Bye.
All right, take care.